I am Sarah, 42 years old, and my husband just handed me divorce papers across our kitchen island, telling me I had exactly 1 day to vacate the home I paid for because his pregnant mistress needed the space for her nursery. Before I tell you about the absolute hell I rained down on them, let me know where you are watching from in the comments below. It was a Tuesday. I remember that because Tuesday is usually the day I handle the household accounts, and the day Richard pretends to go to his investment strategy meetings. The sun was streaming through the bay windows of our kitchen in Westchester, hitting the Italian marble countertops that I had picked out 3 years ago. I was chopping vegetables for a pot roast, Richard's favorite, humming a tune I'd heard on the radio. It was the picture of domestic bliss. Or so I let everyone believe. The front door opened with a heavy thud. No, honey, I'm home. No sound of shoes being wiped on the mat. Just the heavy, confident footsteps of a man who thinks he owns the world. Richard walked into the kitchen. He was wearing his navy Brooks Brothers suit, the one I bought him for our anniversary last year. He looked good. He always looked good. That was Richard's best asset, his packaging. He didn't look at me. He didn't look at the pot roast. He walked straight to the granite island, opened his leather briefcase, and pulled out a thick manila envelope. He slid it across the marble with enough force that it stopped just inches from my cutting board. "Harper, stop chopping," he said. His voice was cold, devoid of any warmth that had existed there for the past 15 years. I set the knife down. "What is this, Richard?" "It's over," he said, adjusting his silk tie. "I filed this morning. My lawyer says it's a standard no-fault divorce. Irreconcilable differences." I looked at the envelope. My hands were trembling, but I clenched them into fists below the counter so he couldn't see. Irreconcilable differences? We just booked a vacation to Cabo for next month. You kissed me goodbye this morning. Richard let out a sigh, the kind a parent gives a slow child. Things change, Sarah. And frankly, I'm tired of waiting. I'm 45 years old. I want a legacy. I want a family. And you? He looked me up and down, his eyes lingering on my stomach with a look of pure disdain. You obviously can't give me that. The air left my lungs. He knew exactly where to hit. We had tried for years. 3 rounds of IVF. 2 miscarriages that nearly broke me. And every time, he had held my hand and said it was okay. Apparently, it wasn't. "So, you're leaving me because we don't have children?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. "Not just that," Richard smirked, a cruel, twisted expression I had never seen before. "I'm leaving you because I found someone who can. Someone younger. Someone with life in her." He pulled out his phone and tapped the screen, turning it around to face me. It was a photo of a woman. She was young, maybe mid-20s, with blonde hair and a yoga outfit that cost more than my first car. But that wasn't what Richard wanted me to see. He was pointing at her stomach. A small, barely there bump. "Her name is Tiffany," he announced, puffed up with pride like a rooster. "She's a Pilates instructor. And she's carrying my son." A son. The word hung in the air like toxic smoke. "She's 3 months along," Richard continued, not noticing, or not caring, that my world was shattering. "And she needs peace and quiet. Her apartment is too small and noisy. It's not good for the baby. So, she's moving in here." I blinked, trying to process the audacity. "She's moving, here? Into our house?" "My house," Richard corrected sharply. "I'm the head of this household, Sarah. And as of this moment, you are a guest who has overstayed her welcome." He tapped the envelope on the counter. "I'm being generous. I'm giving you 24 hours. Pack your personal effects, clothes, toiletries. Leave the furniture, the electronics, and the art. Tiffany likes the aesthetic, and she needs to be comfortable." 24 hours? I repeated. "Richard, this is illegal. You can't just kick me out. We have to go through the courts. Division of assets. He laughed. It was a barking, ugly sound. Don't be difficult, Sarah. You were a secretary when I met you. You have nothing. Everything here, the cars, the house, the lifestyle, I provided it. If you drag this out, I will bury you in legal fees until you're living in a cardboard box. Just sign the papers, take the settlement check I've included, which is more than fair, and leave with some dignity. I looked at him. Really looked at him. This man I had devoted 15 years to. I had built his image. I had managed his social calendar. I had smoothed over his conflicts with clients. I had managed the household finances because he was too busy with the big picture. He thought I was just a housewife. He thought I was the same shy girl he met 20 years ago. He forgot that before I retired to support him, I wasn't just a secretary. I was a paralegal specializing in estate planning and asset protection. I knew trust law better than I knew my own recipes. Tiffany wants the master bedroom for the nursery, Richard added, twisting the knife. It has the best light. She's already picked out the color scheme. Blue, obviously. For the air. The air. That was it. That was the moment the sadness evaporated, replaced by a cold, hard rage that settled in the pit of my stomach. He wasn't just leaving me. He was replacing me. He was erasing me. He wanted to bring his pregnant mistress into the home I curated, sleep in my bed, and raise his child in the room I had cried in when we lost ours. I looked at the divorce papers. Then I looked at Richard. He was checking his watch, probably anxious to get back to Tiffany and tell her he had handled the old wife. Okay, I said. Richard blinked, surprised by my sudden capitulation. Okay? You're right, I said, keeping my voice steady, masking the tremor. I can't fight you, Richard. You're the successful investment banker. I'm just, me. I don't want a war. I just want peace. He relaxed, his shoulders dropping. A smug smile spread across his face. See? I knew you were a sensible woman, Sarah. That's why I married you. You know your place. My place. I'll be out by tomorrow evening, I said, turning back to the cutting board. I just need time to pack my clothes. Good, Richard said. I'm staying at the club tonight. I don't want to watch you mope around packing. I'll be back tomorrow at 6 p.m. with Tiffany. I expect the keys on the counter and you gone. He turned and walked out. He didn't even say goodbye. He just grabbed an apple from the bowl, took a bite, and left. I stood there in the silence of the kitchen. The pot roast ingredients sat on the counter, abandoned. I picked up the knife again. For a second, I just stared at the sharp edge glinting in the sunlight. Then, I calmly swept the vegetables into the trash. There would be no pot roast tonight. 24 hours, I whispered to the empty room. He thought he had given me a deadline. What he didn't realize was that he had given me a head start. He thought he was the owner of this house. He thought he was the smart one. I walked over to the envelope and opened it. I scanned the legal jargon. It was sloppy work. His lawyer was probably one of his drinking buddies from the golf club. My house, he had said. I looked around the kitchen. I looked at the Viking stove. I looked at the custom cabinetry. I looked at the ceiling where we had fixed a leak last winter. Richard had a short memory. He seemed to have forgotten exactly where the money for the down payment had come from. He seemed to have forgotten whose name was on the deed of the LLC that actually held the title. He wanted the house for his heir? I smiled. It wasn't a nice smile. It was the smile of a woman who just realized she held the kill switch to her husband's entire life. Okay, Richard, I said aloud. Let's get ready for Tiffany. The moment the front door clicked shut and I heard Richard's Mercedes roar out of the driveway, the silence of the house pressed in on me. It wasn't peaceful. It was heavy, loaded with 15 years of memories that were now being evicted along with me. I didn't start packing immediately. Instead, I poured myself a glass of iced water, my hands were shaking too much for anything hot, and walked into the living room. I sat on the Italian leather sofa Richard had just commanded me to leave behind because Tiffany liked the aesthetic. I ran my hand over the cool leather. I remembered the day we bought it. Richard had thrown a fit about the price, claiming we needed to be frugal, that his bonus hadn't come in yet. I had simply nodded, pulled out my checkbook, the one linked to my personal inheritance account, and paid for it. "You're the best, babe," he had said, kissing my cheek. "We're a team. My money is for our future, your money is for the fun stuff." The fun stuff. That's what he called the inheritance my grandmother Rose had left me. Rose was a woman of steel. She had raised me after my parents died, taught me how to balance a ledger by age 10, and how to spot a liar by age 12. She had left me a substantial sum, protected within a trust, with strict instructions: "Sarah, never let a man handle your security. Love him, but keep your name on the paper." I closed my eyes. "Grandma Rose, I'm so sorry." I let him think he was the king. I stood up. I had work to do. 24 hours was not a lot of time to dismantle a life, but it was just enough time to bury a husband. I went upstairs to the master bedroom. The room Richard wanted for his nursery. I walked into the walk-in closet. His side was full of bespoke suits, silk ties, and designer shoes. My side was more modest. I had stopped buying expensive things for myself years ago to support the household budget while Richard built his image. I pulled down my suitcases from the top shelf. The dust made me sneeze. As I started folding my clothes, a wave of grief hit me so hard I had to sit on the floor. It wasn't the house I was mourning. It was the lie. I had truly loved him. I had believed in him. When he wanted to start his own firm, I funded the initial capital. When he made bad trades and lost our savings, I bailed us out. I had made myself small so he could feel big. And this was my reward. Being discarded for a 20-something Pilates instructor with a fake tan and a working uterus. I wiped my eyes. No more tears. Crying wouldn't save me. Strategy would. I needed to secure my valuables. I reached for the small safe hidden behind the vanity mirror. I punched in the code, my birthday, ironically. The door beeped open. I reached for the velvet box that held my most prized possession, Grandmother Rose's emerald earrings. They were vintage Art Deco, worth more than Richard's car. I wanted to wear them one last time before I left, a talisman of strength. I opened the box. It was empty. My heart stopped. I blinked, thinking maybe I was seeing things. I shook the box. Nothing. The velvet indentation where the earrings should have been stared back at me, mocking and vacant. Panic flared in my chest. I frantically checked the other boxes. My diamond tennis bracelet, gone. The sapphire pendant Richard had given me for our 10th anniversary, gone. "No, no, no," I whispered, pulling the safe drawers out completely. Maybe I moved them? Maybe I took them for cleaning? But I knew I hadn't. I hadn't worn the emerald since Christmas. Then I saw it. Tucked in the back of the safe, crumpled up like trash, was a receipt. I smoothed it out on the carpet. It was a pawn shop slip from a place in downtown Manhattan. Dated 3 weeks ago. Item, Art Deco emerald drop earrings. Pair. Loan amount, $4,500. Customer, Richard Caldwell. I stared at the paper. He hadn't just stolen from me. He had pawned my grandmother's legacy. For what? $4,000? Richard made that in a week. Why would he need quick cash? And then I saw the second piece of paper underneath it. A receipt from Tiffany & Company. Not the person. The store. Item, platinum solitaire diamond ring. 2.5 carat. Price, $28,000. Date, 2 days after the pawn shop slip. The air in the room grew freezing cold. He had stolen my grandmother's jewelry, pawned it for pennies on the dollar, and used the cash, along with who knows what else, to buy an engagement ring for his mistress. A scream built up in my throat, raw and primal. I wanted to throw the lamp through the window. I wanted to burn his suits. I wanted to drive to his club and run him over. But I didn't. I forced the scream down until it burned my chest like acid. Grandma Rose's voice echoed in my head. Knowledge is power, Sarah. Anger is just energy. Don't waste energy. Use it. He had crossed a line. Cheating was one thing. Kicking me out was another. But stealing Rose's emeralds? That was a declaration of war. I looked at the receipts again. If he was pawning jewelry to buy a ring, that meant he was cash poor. But how? I managed the household accounts. We had savings. Or so I thought. I realized with a jolt of horror that while I managed the household account, Richard managed the investments and the retirement funds. I had trusted him. He was a professional, after all. I stood up, my knees cracking. The sadness was completely gone now. It had been replaced by a forensic curiosity. You want to play dirty, Richard? I whispered, tucking the pawn slip into my bra. Let's see just how dirty your hands really are. I wasn't packing anymore. I was hunting. I went to his bedside table. Richard was a creature of habit. He kept his work devices separate from his home devices, but he was lazy with security. He believed he was smarter than everyone else, which made him careless. I opened the drawer. Empty. Of course, he took his phone and laptop. But then, under a stack of Golf Digest magazines, I saw a sliver of silver. It was his old iPad. The one he claimed was broken 6 months ago when he bought the new Pro model. I pulled it out. The screen was cracked in the corner, but when I pressed the home button, the battery icon flashed red. It wasn't dead. It was just sleeping. My heart hammered against my ribs. I ran to the bathroom, grabbed a charger, and plugged it in. Please turn on. Please, please turn on. While I waited, I looked around the room that was supposed to become a nursery. I imagined Tiffany here. Painting the walls blue. Putting a crib where my reading chair stood. Erasing me. She didn't know, I realized. She didn't know who she was messing with. She probably thought I was some dowdy housewife who would roll over and die. She didn't know she was stepping into a cage with a lioness who had just realized her cub, her dignity, her past, her legacy, had been stolen. The iPad chimed. The Apple logo appeared. I sat on the edge of the bed, holding the device like a holy relic. Enter passcode. I tried his birthday. Incorrect. I tried our anniversary. Incorrect. I tried his mother's birthday. Incorrect. I paused. Think like Richard. What does Richard love most in the world? Himself. His image. His car. I typed in the model number of his beloved vintage Porsche, 911T. The screen unlocked. I let out a breath I didn't know I was holding. The Wi-Fi connected automatically to the house network. And then, the notifications started to flood in. Ding. 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 Emails. Messages. Calendar reminders. Because he hadn't wiped the device. He had just thrown it in a drawer. And because he was signed into his iCloud, everything from his current phone was syncing to this old tablet. I watched the screen populate with the secrets of a man who thought he was untouchable. I tapped on the Messages app. At the top of the list, pinned, was a contact named my soulmate. I clicked it. The most recent message, sent 10 minutes ago, Richard, I did it, babe. The bitch is leaving tomorrow. The house is ours. Get the nursery ready. The reply came instantly, Tiffany, finally. I can't wait to get out of this tiny apartment. The baby is kicking so hard right now, Daddy. He needs his mansion. I stared at the words. The bitch. My hand hovered over the screen. I was about to scroll up, to read the history of their betrayal. But then, a photo caught my eye. It was sent yesterday. An ultrasound picture. It showed a grainy black and white fetus. The timestamp said 12 weeks. I zoomed in. I'm not a doctor. But I've stared at enough ultrasound photos during my IVF years to know what they look like. I know the headers. I know the medical codes. Something about this photo looked wrong. The name on the top of the scan didn't say Tiffany Miller. It said Patient ID, 88421. And the date in the corner was blurred, as if someone had tried to crop it but failed. I felt a prickle of instinct on the back of my neck. I opened the Safari browser on the iPad and typed in Patient ID 88421 ultrasound. Nothing. Then I typed, fake ultrasound generator. And there it was. The first image result. It was the exact same baby. The exact same angle. The exact same grainy head. It was a stock image from a prank website called fakeababy.com. My mouth fell open. She's not pregnant, I whispered. I looked back at the messages. Tiffany, I need another $5,000 for the special vitamins Dr. Evans prescribed. And the deposit for the doula. Richard, sent. Anything for my heir. I started laughing. It was a hysterical, dry sound that echoed in the empty room. Richard wasn't just a cheater. He was a mark. He was being played. But if she was faking the pregnancy, what else was she faking? I looked at the iPad again. I had 23 hours left. And I had just found the loose thread that would unravel the entire sweater. Game on, Tiffany, I said. The discovery that the ultrasound was fake was like a shot of adrenaline straight to my heart. The grief was entirely gone now, replaced by a razor-sharp focus. I wasn't just a scorned wife anymore, I was an investigator, a prosecutor, and a judge all rolled into one. I sat cross-legged on the bed, the iPad glowing in the dimming light of the afternoon. I needed to know the extent of the damage. I needed to know exactly how much of my life Richard had funneled into this scam. I switched from the text messages to the banking apps. Thank God for Face ID on his phone, but on this old iPad, he had saved his passwords in the keychain. Richard 123. Creative. I logged into our joint investment account. The one that was supposed to have over $500,000 in it, our retirement, the rainy day fund, the money I had transferred from my own earnings over the years. Balance, $12,400. I gasped, my hand flying to my mouth. It was gone. All of it. I frantically clicked on the transaction history. Withdrawal, $50,000 angel investment. Withdrawal, $25,000 Porsche dealership. Withdrawal, $10,000 cash. Withdrawal, $15,000 consulting fee. The list went on and on. For 6 months, he had been draining our accounts dry. He wasn't just buying her dinner, he was funding her entire lifestyle. And he was doing it under the guise of investments. I felt sick. Physically ill. That money represented years of my work, my sacrifices. I had worn old clothes, cooked at home, and skipped vacations to build that safety net. And he had blown it on a woman who downloaded her baby from Google Images. I switched to his credit card statements. The Amex Black Card. The Plaza Hotel $800. Saks Fifth Avenue $3,200. Sephora $600. Bye Bye Baby $4,500. I clicked on the details for the Bye Bye Baby charge. It wasn't in store. It was online. Shipped to address, 142, Maple Drive, Apartment 4B, Yonkers, New York. Tiffany's apartment. But then I saw something that made me pause. A calendar notification popped up on the top of the screen. Reminder, 7 p.m. dinner with Kitten. Kitten? He called her soulmate in the texts. Was Kitten a pet name? I opened the calendar app. Richard's calendar was a mess of color-coded lies. Business meeting in red usually meant a date. Golf in green usually meant a weekend away. But I noticed a shared calendar layered underneath. It was labeled Tiffany's schedule. She must have shared it with him so he knew when she was free. I scrolled through her week. Monday 10 a.m., prenatal yoga. Tuesday 2 p.m., Dr. Evans appointment. Wednesday 12 p.m., lunch with daddy. Thursday 6 p.m., Lamaze class. Friday 8 p.m., weekend retreat. I froze. 3 different names attached to 3 different pregnancy-related events in the same week. My mind raced. Was Michael a doctor? Was David a yoga teacher? I went back to the text messages. I scrolled down past Richard's thread. There were other threads, but they were unnamed numbers. Richard hadn't saved them. But wait, this was Richard's iPad. Why would Tiffany's messages be here? Then I realized, they weren't. This was her calendar shared to his device. He could see her schedule. He was just too narcissistic to question who Michael and David were. He probably thought they were instructors or doctors. But I knew better. A woman like Tiffany, a woman who fakes an ultrasound and accepts $50,000 investments, doesn't have male friends. She has targets. I grabbed my own phone. I needed to verify this. I typed the dates and times into my notes. Thursday 6 p.m. Michael. Friday 8 p.m. David. I went back to the text thread with Tiffany. I scrolled up to find a photo of her. I needed a clear face shot. I found one Richard had saved, a selfie of her in a bikini, blowing a kiss. I ran a reverse image search. Results popped up immediately. Instagram at tiff_fit_life. Bio, wellness coach. Mom-to-be. Manifesting abundance. I clicked on her profile. It was public. I scrolled through her posts. Endless photos of avocado toast, gym selfies, and vague spiritual quotes. Then I saw the comments. Under a photo of her holding a positive pregnancy test, there were hundreds of congratulations. But I looked for specific users. User at Mike_Tech_CEO commented, "So happy for us, babe. Can't wait to meet our little linebacker." User at Dr_Dave_Surgeon commented, "My miracle. You are glowing. See you Friday for the retreat." User at Rich_Invest, "My legacy begins. Love you, soulmate." I dropped the phone on the bed. Oh. My God. She wasn't just cheating on Richard. She wasn't just faking a pregnancy for Richard. She was pregnant with the same fake baby for 3 different men at the same time. And they were all commenting on the same public post, probably thinking the other men were just friends or relatives. The linebacker. The miracle. The legacy. She was running a Ponzi scheme of paternity. I stood up and paced the room. My energy was vibrating so hard I could barely feel my feet. This was huge. This wasn't just a divorce case anymore. This was grand larceny. This was fraud on a massive scale. Richard had kicked me out for a woman who was actively carrying 2 other men's children. I looked at the clock. 5 p.m. I had been digging for 2 hours. I had names. Michael. David. I needed to find them. And more importantly, I needed to find their wives. Because men like this, men like Richard, wealthy, older, gullible, they usually had wives. Wives who were probably being told the same lies I was. Wives who were probably seeing their bank accounts drain. I sat back down at the computer. I felt a grim satisfaction settle over me. Okay, Tiffany, I muttered, cracking my knuckles. You want a nursery? I'm going to give you a prison cell. I opened LinkedIn. It was time to go to work. I searched for Mike Tech CEO. Result, Michael Henderson. CEO of Henderson Logistics. Based in Connecticut. Status, married to Claire Henderson. I searched for Dr. Dave Surgeon. Result, Dr. David Evans. Chief of Orthopedics at St. Jude's. Based in Long Island. Status, married to Brenda Evans. I had them. Claire Henderson. Brenda Evans. Two women I had never met, living miles away, connected by one fake uterus and 3 stupid husbands. I looked at their profiles. Claire looked fierce. Short hair, sharp suit. She was a CFO of a nonprofit. Brenda looked kind. Soft smile, photos with grandchildren. She was a retired nurse. They had no idea. Just like I had no idea this morning. I hesitated. Calling a stranger to tell them their husband is funding a fake pregnancy for a mistress is delicate. They might hang up. They might not believe me. They might blame me. But then I looked at the empty velvet box where my grandmother's earrings used to be. I thought about Richard's face when he told me to get out. I thought about the nursery he was stealing my home for. I wasn't doing this just for me anymore. I was doing it for the sisterhood of women who get traded in like used cars. I found Claire's work email. I found Brenda's home number listed in an old PTA directory online. I took a deep breath. Showtime, I whispered. Before I made the calls, I needed bulletproof evidence. I knew how these men operated, and I assumed their wives would be just as skeptical as I would have been yesterday. An accusation is nothing, proof is everything. I needed to connect the dots so tightly that not even a lawyer could pry them apart. I went back to the banking records on Richard's iPad. I exported the last 6 months of transactions into a spreadsheet. I filtered by transfer. There was a pattern. Every Friday, Richard transferred $2,500 to a Venmo account at Tiff_Goddess. Every first of the month, he paid $4,800 to a landlord in Yonkers. I cross-referenced this with Tiffany's shared calendar. On the Fridays Richard paid her, her calendar said, allowance Daddy 1. But on Mondays, there was an entry, allowance Daddy 2. And Wednesdays, allowance Daddy 3. She was collecting weekly stipends from all 3 men. I did the math. $2,500 x 3 men equals $7,500 a week. That's $30,000 a month. Plus rent paid by Richard. Plus car payments probably paid by Michael. Plus medical bills paid by the doctor. This woman was making $500,000 a year tax-free by pretending to be pregnant. It was almost impressive, in a sociopathic way. But here was the kicker. The medical bills. I looked closer at the transfers Richard made for Dr. Evans, $1,200 ultrasound specialist. $3,000 genetic testing. Wait. Dr. Evans was the name of the other victim I found on LinkedIn. Dr. David Evans. Was Tiffany using David's name on fake invoices to bill Richard? I searched Richard's email for invoice. I found one from Evans Medical Group. It looked official. Logo, address, itemized list of prenatal services. But the address for Evans Medical Group on the invoice was 142, Maple Drive, Apartment 4B, Yonkers. Tiffany's apartment. She had created a fake medical practice using the name of one of her lovers to bill the other lover. This was fraud. Mail fraud. Wire fraud. Identity theft. My hands flew across the keyboard. I took screenshots of everything. The fake ultrasound. The fake invoice with the lover's name, the calendar showing the rotation of men. The Instagram comments from all 3 fathers. The Zillow estimate of my house. I created a digital dossier folder named Project Nursery. I felt a strange sense of calm. The fear of being homeless, of being alone at 42, was gone. I had a mission. I looked at the clock. 7:30 p.m. Richard would be at the club now, probably bragging to his buddies about how he handled his wife. Tiffany was probably wearing her silicone belly, eating sushi, and texting Michael or David. I needed to reach Claire and Brenda now. Before tomorrow. Because tomorrow, Tiffany was moving in. And I needed a welcoming committee. I decided to call Brenda first. She seemed softer. More likely to listen. My finger hovered over the dial button on my cell phone. My heart thumped against my ribs like a trapped bird. What if she hangs up? What if she screams at me? Do it for Grandma Rose, I said aloud. I pressed call. The phone rang 3 times. Hello? A woman's voice. Warm, slightly distracted. I could hear the sound of a TV in the background. Is this Brenda Evans? I asked, keeping my voice professional but gentle. Yes, this is she. May I ask who is calling? Brenda, my name is Sarah Caldwell. We don't know each other, but I think we share a mutual acquaintance. A woman named Tiffany Miller. Silence. The TV sound in the background seemed to get louder. I don't know a Tiffany Miller, Brenda said, her voice tightening slightly. Is she a patient of my husband's? In a way, I said. Brenda, this is going to sound incredibly strange and painful, but please, don't hang up. My husband, Richard, believes he is having a baby with Tiffany. And based on what I've found, your husband, David, believes the same thing. Excuse me? The warmth was gone. Listen, lady, if this is a prank, does David go to medical conferences on Friday nights? I asked quickly, reading from Tiffany's calendar. Did he buy a wellness retreat package for $5,000 last month? Does he talk about a miracle baby? The silence on the other end was heavy now. I could hear her breathing. How do you know about the retreat? Brenda whispered. Because my husband paid for her rent the same week your husband paid for her retreat, I said. Brenda, she's not pregnant. Or if she is, she's telling 3 different men it's theirs. I have proof. I have bank records, calendars, fake ultrasounds. I'm looking at an invoice right now where she used your husband's name to bill my husband for fake medical services. David's name? Yes. Evans Medical Group. Listed at her apartment address. I heard a gasp. Then, a sob. He told me it was a midlife crisis, Brenda cried. He told me he needed space. He said he met someone who understood his soul. He wanted a divorce. We've been married 30 years. I know, Brenda. I know. Richard told me I had 24 hours to leave my house today. 24 hours? Yes. She's moving in tomorrow. She wants my house for the nursery. The nursery for the baby that David thinks is his. That bitch, Brenda's voice changed. The sadness was replaced by a sharp, jagged anger. That absolute bitch. He emptied our joint savings. He said it was for a malpractice suit settlement. He gave it to her? I think so. Brenda, I have a plan. But I need you. And I need one other woman. Who? Claire Henderson. Her husband Michael is the third father. Call her, Brenda said, her voice steel now. Conference her in. I'll wait. I dialed Claire's number. Claire picked up on the first ring. This is Claire. Sharp. Efficient. Claire, don't hang up. My name is Sarah. I'm on the line with Brenda. We are the wives of the men Tiffany Miller is scamming. Claire didn't gasp. She didn't cry. That little yoga slut? Claire spat out. I knew it. Michael has been acting like a lovesick teenager for months. buying protein powder and dyeing his hair. Is she pregnant? She says she is, I said. With triplets, apparently. One for each of our husbands. Huh. Claire let out a dark laugh. Michael had a vasectomy in 2010. He didn't tell her? I almost dropped the phone. He what? He had a vasectomy. If she thinks she's pregnant with his kid, she's the next Virgin Mary. I've just been waiting for him to figure it out, but the idiot is so flattered by the attention he probably thinks his swimmers grew back. Claire, she's faking the whole thing, I said. Fake ultrasound. Silicone belly. She's running a rotation. Monday is Michael, Tuesday is Richard, Friday is David. I'm going to kill him, Claire said calmly. I am going to kill him, and then I'm going to sue her. Don't kill him yet, I said. We have a better opportunity. She's moving into my house tomorrow at 6 p.m. Richard thinks he's won. She thinks she's won. I want you both there. At your house? Brenda asked. Yes. Bring your husbands. Tell them whatever you have to tell them. Tell them you know about the baby and you want to support them. Tell them you want to meet the mother. Just get them to my address at 6:30 p.m. tomorrow. Oh, this is rich, Claire said. Michael thinks I'm oblivious. If I tell him I want to make peace, he'll think he's a genius negotiator. He'll come. David will come if I tell him I'm signing the divorce papers, Brenda said. Good, I said. I'm going to send you both the dossier I compiled. The photos, the texts, the fake invoices. Print them out. Bring them. Sarah, Brenda asked, her voice soft again. Are you okay? You're losing your home. I looked around the dark kitchen. The shadows stretched across the floor. I'm not losing anything, Brenda, I said. I'm just taking out the trash. We hung up. I sat there in the dark. I felt powerful. I wasn't alone anymore. I had a coalition. The First Wives Club from hell. I went upstairs to finish packing. But I didn't pack everything. I packed my clothes, yes. My shoes. But I left the furniture. I left the curtains. And I prepared the welcome gift. I went to the basement. I found the cans of paint Richard had bought for the deck but never used. Bright, safety orange. No, too obvious. I went back to the safe. I took the empty velvet jewelry boxes. I placed them prominently on the dresser in the master bedroom. I printed out the fakeababy.com receipt. I put it in the envelope Richard had given me. I went to sleep in the guest room. I slept like a baby. The next morning, the deadline loomed. Richard texted me at 9 a.m. Richard, reminder. 6 p.m. Keys on the counter. Don't make a scene. I replied, Sarah, everything will be ready. Enjoy your day. I spent the day methodically staging the house. I wasn't destroying it, I was setting a stage. I ordered catering. A nice spread. Champagne. Sushi. Soft cheese. All the things a pregnant woman shouldn't eat. I cleaned the house until it sparkled. I wanted it to look like the prize she thought she had won. At 5 p.m., I moved my suitcases to my car. I drove my car down the street and parked it around the corner, hidden behind a large oak tree. Then I walked back to the house and waited in the garden shed. It had a window that looked directly at the driveway. At 5:45 p.m., a moving truck pulled up. Not a professional van, a 2 guys and a truck rental. Then, Richard's Mercedes pulled in. I watched through the dusty glass. Richard got out first. He ran around to the passenger side and opened the door. Tiffany stepped out. I had only seen her in photos, but in person, she was much. She was wearing a tight white maxi dress that clung to her bump. And the bump was huge. For 12 weeks, she looked 6 months pregnant. She had a hand resting protectively on top of it. She looked at the house and squealed. Actually squealed. She threw her arms around Richard's neck. "Oh, Daddy. It's perfect," she shrieked. I winced. "Daddy. Gross." They walked up the front steps. I had left the door unlocked, as instructed. The keys were on the counter. I checked my watch. 6 p.m. The movers started hauling boxes in. Pink boxes. Leopard print boxes. I waited. At 6:15 p.m., a Lexus SUV pulled up. Brenda. She was driving. In the passenger seat sat a man who looked nervous, Dr. David Evans. He was clutching a bouquet of flowers. He probably thought he was coming to meet a lawyer or a mediator. He looked confused to be at a private residence. At 6:20 p.m., a Tesla pulled up. Claire. She stepped out, looking like an executioner in a sharp blazer. She marched around and yanked the passenger door open. Michael Henderson stumbled out. He was wearing a leather jacket that was too young for him and had suspiciously dark hair. He looked terrified. I stepped out of the shed. It was time. I walked up the driveway. Brenda and Claire saw me. We exchanged a nod. A silent pact. The husbands looked at each other. "Who are you?" Michael asked David. I'm here for a meeting," David stammered. "We're all here for a meeting," I said, walking up to them. "Gentlemen, my name is Sarah. This is my house. And I believe you're here to celebrate the housewarming of your girlfriend, Tiffany." The color drained from both men's faces simultaneously. "Tiffany?" Michael squeaked. "No, I don't know a Tiffany." "Cut the crap, Michael," Claire snapped. "We're going inside. Sarah invited us." But Richard," David said. "Who is Richard?" "Richard is my husband," I said pleasantly. "And currently, he is inside rubbing the feet of the woman carrying your triplets." "Triplets?" Michael asked. "She told me it was one." "She told me it was a boy," David said. "Well," I said, opening the front door. "Let's go ask her." We walked into the foyer. The house was quiet except for the sound of Richard's voice coming from the living room. "It's all yours, babe. Look at this space. We can put the playpen right there. I want to paint this wall gold," Tiffany's voice cooed. "And get rid of that ugly chandelier." That chandelier was an antique crystal fixture from Paris. I walked into the living room. Brenda, Claire, Michael, and David followed me in a phalanx of doom. Richard was popping a bottle of champagne. Tiffany was lounging on my sofa, her feet in Richard's lap. "Surprise," I said. Richard dropped the champagne bottle. It smashed on the floor, foam exploding over his Italian shoes. Tiffany sat up so fast she forgot to hold her belly, and it shifted slightly to the left. "Sarah?" Richard stammered. "What, you're supposed to be gone." Who are these people?" "These people," I said, gesturing to the group behind me, "are the family." "Family?" Tiffany's eyes darted around. She saw Michael. She saw David. Her face went from glowing to gray in a split second. It was the face of a deer staring down the barrel of 3 shotguns. "Michael," she whispered. "David?" "Hello, kitten," Michael said, his voice trembling with rage. "I thought you were at Lama's class." "I thought you were at the retreat," David said, stepping forward. "My wife told me we were coming to meet a divorce lawyer." "We are," Brenda said, stepping up beside him. "Just not the way you thought." Richard looked from Michael to David, then down at Tiffany. "Who are these men?" Richard demanded. "Tiffany, do you know them?" Tiffany opened her mouth, but no sound came out. She looked at the door, calculating the distance. They are the other fathers, Richard, I said, walking over to the TV. I thought it would be nice to have a combined baby shower. Save on balloons. I picked up the remote. I had connected my phone to the AirPlay earlier. What is going on? Richard shouted, his face turning purple. Get out of my house. All of you. It's not your house, Richard, I said calmly. And she's not pregnant. I pressed play. The TV screen lit up. The first image was the fake ultrasound from fakeababy.com. Patient ID 88421, I read aloud. Available for download for $19.99. The room went deathly silent. Then, Claire stepped forward. She was holding a purse. But she wasn't reaching for a tissue. She looked at Tiffany's belly. That lopsided, massive belly. You know, Claire said, her voice dripping with venom. I've always wondered what a $30,000 silicone baby feels like. And before anyone could move, Claire lunged. You guys, I have seen some crazy things in my life. I've seen families fight over wills, I've seen siblings sue each other over a stamp collection. But nothing, and I mean nothing, prepared me for the chaos that erupted in my living room the moment Claire Henderson lunged at my husband's mistress. It happened in slow motion, and then all at once. 1 second, the room was frozen in a tense silence, the image of the fake ultrasound glowing on the 65-inch TV screen like a neon sign of doom. The next second, Claire, who looks like a CEO even when she's committing assault, launched herself across the coffee table. She didn't go for Tiffany's hair. She didn't go for her face. She went straight for the baby. Tiffany shrieked, a high-pitched, ear-splitting sound that shattered the tension. Get away from me. You're crazy. But Claire was faster. She grabbed the hem of that tight white maxi dress and yanked it upward while simultaneously grabbing the top of the bump. There was a sound. A sound I will never forget as long as I live. Rip. It was the unmistakable sound of industrial-strength Velcro tearing away from fabric. Tiffany tried to scramble backward, clawing at Claire's hands, but it was too late. The massive, basketball-sized lump under her dress shifted violently to the side. It didn't move like flesh. It didn't move like a human body part. It moved like a rigid, foam object. And then, it fell. The baby literally fell out from under her dress and bounced, yes, bounced, onto my Persian rug. The room went dead silent. We all stared at it. It was a silicone prosthetic, the kind actors use in movies, complete with a fake belly button. It lay there on the rug, looking ridiculous and terrifying at the same time. Tiffany stood there, her dress rucked up, revealing a stomach that was as flat as an ironing board. She was wearing Spanx. For a solid 10 seconds, nobody breathed. The only sound was the hum of the refrigerator from the kitchen. Then, Michael Henderson, the CEO who thought he was having a linebacker, made a noise. It was a whimpering, choking sound. It fell off, he whispered, staring at the silicone lump. My son just fell off. It's not your son, you idiot. Claire shouted, straightening her blazer and breathing hard. It's a prop. It's foam rubber. Look at her. All eyes turned to Tiffany. The glowing mother-to-be was gone. In her place was a terrified, exposed con artist. Her face was pale beneath the bronzer, and her hands were trembling as she tried to pull her dress down to cover her flat stomach. I can explain, Tiffany stammered, her voice shaking. She looked at Richard, then Michael, then David. It was a medical necessity. The doctor said I needed the support band because the babies are so heavy. Babies? Richard's voice cracked. He looked like he was having a stroke. His face was a map of confusion and horror. You said it was one boy. My heir. She told me it was a girl, David, the doctor, said quietly. He walked over to the silicone belly and nudged it with his shoe. He looked up, his eyes full of tears. I'm a doctor. I'm an orthopedic surgeon. How did I not see this? Because you were thinking with the wrong head, David, Brenda said, her voice dripping with disappointment. Because you wanted to believe you were still young and virile. Tiffany realized the medical support lie wasn't working. She switched tactics instantly. Tears, fake ones, I assumed, started streaming down her face. She fell to her knees, not in apology, but in a dramatic pose of victimhood. They made me do it, she wailed, pointing a shaking finger at nobody in particular. I was scared. I didn't know how to tell you guys. I was pregnant, I swear, but I lost it, and I didn't want to break your hearts. You lost it? I stepped forward, my voice calm and cold. When, Tiffany? Before or after you downloaded the ultrasound from a prank website? Before or after you collected $30,000 in prenatal vitamins allowance this month alone? I love them. Tiffany sobbed, looking at the three men. I love all of you. We have a spiritual connection. The money didn't matter. Didn't matter? Richard roared. The shock was wearing off, replaced by the explosive rage of a narcissist who has been made a fool of. I gave you $50,000 for an angel investment last week. Where is that money? Where is my money? He took a step toward her, his hands clenched into fists. Richard, stop, I said sharply. Not to protect her, but because I wasn't going to have a domestic violence charge ruin my plan. Look at the screen. I pointed the remote at the TV again. I clicked to the next slide. It was a spreadsheet. A beautiful, color-coded spreadsheet I had compiled the night before. Gentlemen, I said, addressing the three husbands who were currently staring at their mistress's flat stomach. You might want to sit down. Because the fake belly is the least expensive part of this evening. I walked over to the TV like I was presenting a quarterly earnings report. This, I pointed to the first column, is Richard's contribution. Rent, luxury car lease, and weekly allowance. Total over 6 months, $145,000. I pointed to the second column. This is Michael's contribution. Doula fees, birthing retreats, and cash for the nursery. Total, $110,000. I pointed to the third. And David? You paid for the medical procedures. The genetic testing that never happened. The specialists who don't exist. Total, $98,000. I turned to face them. She hasn't just been sleeping with you. She has been billing you. You aren't boyfriends. You are ATMs. The room was heavy with the stench of male humiliation. Michael Henderson looked at Claire. Honey, Don't, Claire snapped. Don't you dare speak to me right now. You look at that spreadsheet, Michael. That's our daughter's college fund you gave to a woman who buys her pregnancy at a costume shop. Tiffany stopped crying. She realized the victim act was over. She stood up, wiping her face. Her eyes hardened. The baby voice was gone. The spiritual persona evaporated. So what? She spat out, her voice sudden and harsh. So I took your money. You threw it at me. You begged me to take it. Oh Tiffany, you're so special. Oh Tiffany, my wife doesn't understand me. You guys are pathetic. You wanted a fantasy, and I sold you one. That's capitalism, isn't it? She looked at Richard with a sneer. Especially you, Dick. You were the easiest. You were so desperate to prove you weren't an old man that I didn't even have to try. You practically wrote the checks before I asked. Richard's face went white. The nickname Dick clearly stung more than the fraud. Get out, Richard whispered. Get out of my house. Tiffany laughed. It was a cold, ugly sound. Your house? Please. I've seen your bank accounts, remember? You're broke, Richard. You're leveraged up to your eyeballs. Without Sarah's money, you're nothing. Richard looked at me. Panic flared in his eyes. He realized, perhaps for the first time, that the only person in the room who actually had any power was the wife he had tried to evict. But we weren't done yet. Not even close. The air in the room was electric, crackling with the energy of 3 marriages imploding and one con artist desperately trying to pivot. Tiffany stood there, defiant, leaning against the marble fireplace like she owned the place, even with the silicone belly lying at her feet like a dead pet. "You think you're so smart," Tiffany sneered at me. "But you can't prove any of this was malicious. They gave me gifts. It's not illegal to accept gifts from stupid men." I smiled. It was the smile Grandma Rose used to give when she caught a contractor trying to overcharge her for lumber. "Gifts are legal, Tiffany," I agreed, walking back to my laptop which was connected to the TV. "But fraud isn't. Tax evasion isn't. And practicing medicine without a license? That's definitely not legal." I clicked the next slide. The screen filled with an image of a document. It was an invoice. Evans Medical Group patient, Tiffany Miller service, high-risk prenatal screening amount, $4,500 payable to T. Miller Consulting LLC. "David," I said, turning to the doctor who was currently sitting on an ottoman with his head in his hands. "Does this invoice look familiar?" David looked up. He squinted at the screen. That's my practice logo. But the address is wrong. And the font, we don't use that font." "Exactly," I said. "Tiffany created fake medical invoices using your name and your medical license number. She sent these invoices to Richard." I pointed at my husband. "Richard paid them, thinking he was covering medical costs for his child. That is wire fraud, Tiffany. That is identity theft. You impersonated a doctor to steal money." Tiffany's defiance faltered. I just used a template," she mumbled. And here, I clicked again. Tax returns. Or rather, the lack thereof. I ran a background check on T. Miller Consulting. You haven't filed taxes in 3 years. Yet, based on these Venmo and Zelle transfers, you've taken in over $300,000 this year alone. The IRS is going to be very interested in your spiritual abundance. Tiffany looked at the door again. She was doing the math. Fraud. IRS. Identity theft. This wasn't just a breakup anymore. This was prison time. "Richard." She turned to my husband, her voice rising in desperation. "Are you going to let her do this? She hacked your iPad. That's illegal too. She invaded our privacy." Richard was shaking. He looked from the screen to me. I could see the gears turning in his head. He was trying to figure out a way to salvage his dignity. He needed to be the victim here, not the villain. "She's right," Richard said, puffing out his chest, trying to regain some of his lost authority. You tricked me, Tiffany. I am a victim here. I am a respected financial advisor. You preyed on my desire for a family." "Your desire for a family?" I interrupted, my voice sharp as a whip. "Richard, you have a wife. You had a family. You threw it away because you wanted a trophy. She manipulated me." Richard shouted, pointing a trembling finger at Tiffany. "She used voodoo. Or pheromones. I wasn't myself, Sarah. You have to believe me. I was drugged. She probably put something in my green smoothies." "Oh, please," Tiffany scoffed. "You weren't drugged. You were horny and bored. Don't rewrite history, Dick. Don't call me that." Richard screamed. He lunged toward her, grabbing her arm. "Give me back the ring. The diamond. I paid $28,000 for that ring. Get off me." Tiffany shrieked, clawing at his face. "Hey." Michael Henderson stepped in, pulling Richard back. "Don't touch her. She's a liar, but you're not going to beat her up in front of us. She has my ring." Richard yelled, his hair disheveled, his face red and sweaty. And she has the keys to the Range Rover. That's my money. Actually, I said, my voice cutting through the noise. It's not your money, Richard. Everyone froze. I walked over to the coffee table and picked up the pile of financial documents I had printed out. This is the part where the math gets really interesting, I said. Richard, you pawned my grandmother's emerald earrings to pay for the down payment on that ring. I found the pawn slip. I held it up. Richard went pale. And the rest of the money? I turned to the other wives. Claire, Brenda, you might want to hear this too. Richard didn't just use his own salary. He emptied our joint retirement account. But that wasn't enough to sustain Tiffany's lifestyle. I clicked the remote one last time. The screen showed a bank statement from Caldwell Investment Clients' escrow account. This is the escrow account for Richard's clients, I explained. The money people entrust to him to invest. It's supposed to be untouchable. The screen showed a series of transfers, $15,000 to cash, $20,000 to T. Miller, $10,000 to Mercedes-Benz Financial. He's been embezzling, I said clearly. Richard has been stealing from his clients to pay for his mistress. That is a federal crime, Richard. That is SEC violation. That is 10 to 20 years in federal prison. The silence that followed was absolute. Richard looked like he had been shot. His knees actually buckled, and he slumped against the wall. No, he whispered. I was going to put it back. Once the market turned. I was going to put it back. You stole client money? Michael Henderson looked at Richard with pure disgust. I run a logistics company, man. Even I know you don't touch the escrow. You are done. You are finished. Sarah, Richard looked at me, his eyes wide and wet with fear. Sarah, you can't tell anyone. Please. If the firm finds out, I'll lose my license. I'll go to jail. You should have thought about that before you gave me 24 hours to leave my own home, I said. But I'm your husband, he pleaded, holding out his hands. We're a team. You have to help me fix this. We can sell the house. We can pay it back before anyone notices. Sarah, please. For the sake of our marriage. I stared at him. The audacity was breathtaking. He had kicked me out yesterday. Today, he wanted me to sell my house to keep him out of jail. Sell the house? I repeated slowly. Yes. Yes. Richard nodded frantically. We sell the house, pay back the escrow, give Tiffany a few grand to shut up and go away. We can start over. I forgive you for the ambush. We can make this work. You forgive me? I let out a laugh that surprised even me. Richard, there is no we. And there is no selling the house. Why not? He demanded. It's our biggest asset. Because, I said, dropping the bombshell I had been saving for the very end. You don't own this house, Richard. Richard looked at me as if I was speaking a foreign language. The desperation on his face was beginning to curdle into anger again, the default setting for a man who is losing control. What do you mean I don't own it? He spat. My name is on the mailbox. I pay the mortgage. I planted those hydrangeas out front. You pay the utilities, Richard, I corrected him. And you planted the hydrangeas because you wanted curb appeal for your bragging rights. But you never paid the mortgage. Because there is no mortgage. I walked over to the kitchen island and picked up the original manila envelope he had thrown at me yesterday. I pulled out a different document, one on thick, blue legal paper. When my grandmother Rose died, I said, addressing the room but looking straight at Richard, she left me a very specific inheritance. She didn't trust men. Especially men who care more about their suits than their wives. So, she set up the Rose Caldwell Revocable Trust. I held up the deed. This house was purchased by the trust, in cash, 3 years ago. The trust is the sole owner. And I am the sole trustee and beneficiary. Your name, Richard, appears nowhere on this deed. Not on the title, not on the loan, not even as a tenant. Richard's mouth opened and closed like a fish on a dock. But I signed papers at the closing. You signed a spousal waiver, I said. You didn't read it, did you? You were too busy flirting with the notary. You signed a document acknowledging that you have no claim to this property. You trapped me. Richard screamed. You planned this. You knew. I protected myself. I shouted back, my voice finally rising to match his. I loved you, Richard. I wanted to share this home with you forever. But I promised my grandmother I would never let a man take the roof over my head. And thank God I listened to her, because look at you. You were ready to throw me onto the street for a fake pregnancy and a pair of yoga pants. Richard looked around the room. He looked at the high ceilings, the crown molding, the life he thought was his. It was all dissolving like smoke. He turned on Tiffany. If he couldn't beat me, he would destroy her. This is your fault, he screamed at her. You poison. You ruined my life. He grabbed a vase from the mantelpiece, a mean vase replica, and hurled it at Tiffany. It missed her by inches and shattered against the wall, sending shards of porcelain flying. Hey! Brenda yelled. Call the police. I already did, I said calmly. They should be here any minute. You called the cops? Richard froze. The color drained from his face completely. Sarah, no. You didn't. Tell me you didn't call the cops. I called them for a domestic disturbance, I said. But I also called a special contact I have. An old friend from law school who works in the district attorney's office. I told him about the escrow account, Richard. Richard let out a sound that wasn't human. It was a primal howl of terror. He dropped to his knees. He actually crawled across the rug toward me, grabbing the hem of my pants. Sarah, please, he sobbed, snot running down his face. It was pathetic. It was disgusting. I'm your husband. I'm sorry. I'll do anything. I'll go to therapy. I'll never see her again. Don't let me go to jail. Please, baby. I love you. I looked down at him. This man who had towered over me yesterday. This man who had sneered at my infertility. This man who had stolen my grandmother's earrings. I felt nothing. No love. No hate. Just a profound sense of relief that I was finally seeing him clearly. Get off my rug, Richard, I said. You're wrinkling the fabric. I kicked my leg free from his grasp. At that moment, the red and blue lights flashed through the front window. The wail of sirens cut through the evening air, growing louder and louder. Tiffany panicked. She grabbed her purse and bolted for the back door. Oh no you don't. Claire shouted. Claire, who runs marathons in her spare time, was faster. She tackled Tiffany in the kitchen. They went down in a heap of limbs and expensive fabric. Let me go. Tiffany screamed, kicking and scratching. I'm pregnant. I'm pregnant. No, you're not. Claire yelled, pinning Tiffany's arms down. We all saw the foam rubber, you psychopath. The front door burst open. Police, a voice boomed. 3 officers walked in. And behind them, 2 agents in suits. FBI. We received a call about a disturbance and potential financial fraud, the lead officer said. I stepped forward, smoothing my blouse. Right here, officer, I said. The man on the floor is Richard Caldwell. He's the one you want for embezzlement. And the woman in the kitchen is Tiffany Miller. She's the one you want for identity theft and fraud. Richard looked up at the police officers. He didn't fight. He just collapsed into a sobbing heap. It wasn't me, he whimpered. It was her. It was all her. Tiffany, pinned by Claire, spat on the floor. He's a liar. He knew. He helped me launder the money. Mutually assured destruction, I whispered to Brenda. Beautiful, isn't it? Watching your husband get arrested is a surreal experience. You think you'll feel sad. You think you'll remember the wedding day, the honeymoon, the good times. But as the officer pulled Richard's hands behind his back and clicked the handcuffs shut, snick, snick, all I could think about was how much lighter the house felt. You have the right to remain silent, the officer recited. Richard wasn't remaining silent. He was babbling. Check her bag. She has cash. She has my money. Sarah, tell them. Tell them I'm a good man. I just watched. I stood with my arms crossed, flanked by Brenda and Claire. We were like a Greek chorus of vengeance. The FBI agents were more interested in the documents on the table. One of them, a tall woman with sharp eyes, picked up the spreadsheet. You compiled this? She asked me. Yes, I said. It includes transaction IDs, dates, and corresponding text messages admitting to the transfers. She raised an eyebrow. You should work for us, Mrs. Caldwell. This is thorough. I had a very motivating 24 hours, I replied. In the kitchen, Tiffany was being hauled up by two officers. She had stopped screaming and had gone completely limp, dead weighting them so they had to drag her. Her fake eyelashes were hanging off, and her white dress was stained with wine and dirt from the floor. I want a lawyer, she hissed as they marched her past us. She locked eyes with me. You're a bitch, Sarah. You're a lonely, bitter, old hag. Maybe, I said, shrugging. But I'm a rich, free woman who owns her own house. And you're going to be the most popular girl in cell block D. They dragged her out. Richard was next. He tried to stop as he passed me. He looked deep into my eyes, searching for a trace of the woman who had bailed him out so many times before. Sarah, he rasped. Who is going to take care of you? You need me. I leaned in close, so only he could hear. Richard, I've been taking care of you for 15 years. I'm going to be just fine. Oh, and by the way? I canceled the Amex card this morning. Good luck with bail. His face crumpled. He realized then, truly, that the Bank of Sarah was closed forever. They walked him out to the cruiser. The neighbors were all on their lawns, phones out, recording everything. Mrs. Gable from next door waved at me. I waved back. Michael and David were still in the living room, looking like lost children. So, Michael said, clearing his throat. I guess we should go. Not so fast, Claire said. She walked over to her husband. You gave her $100,000, Michael. Our money. I can explain, Michael started. You can explain it to my divorce lawyer, Claire said calmly. Get out. Walk home. I'm taking the Tesla. Claire, wait. Go, she screamed, the first time she had raised her voice at him all night. Get out of here before I ask Sarah for those handcuffs. Michael fled. David looked at Brenda. He looked broken. Brenda. I'm sorry. I was stupid. I was lonely. Brenda looked at him with sad, tired eyes. She didn't have Claire's fire. She just had exhaustion. We have a lot to talk about, David, she said quietly. But not tonight. Tonight, I'm staying here. Sarah invited me for a sleepover. A sleepover? David blinked. Yes. We have champagne to drink. Go home, David. Feed the dog. I'll call you when I'm ready. David nodded slowly. He walked out into the night, a man who had lost his dignity and nearly lost his wife. When the door finally closed, silence returned to the house. But it wasn't the heavy, oppressive silence of yesterday. It was the silence of a battlefield after the victory has been won. I looked at Claire. I looked at Brenda. "Well," I said, letting out a long, shaky breath. "Who wants sushi?" The next week was a blur of activity, but it was the good kind. The kind where you are scrubbing away the grime of the past to reveal something shiny and new underneath. The first thing I did was hire a forensic cleaning crew. Not because of a crime scene, though, arguably, my marriage was a crime scene, but to remove every trace of Richard and Tiffany. I had them steam clean the carpets where the fake baby had bounced. I had them sanitize the kitchen where Richard had given me the ultimatum. Then, I hired a junk removal service. "Everything in the master closet on the left side," I told the guys. "Suits, shoes, ties. Take it all." "Donate it?" one guy asked. "Burn it," I said. Then I paused. "Actually, donate it to a job training program for ex-convicts." Richard would appreciate the irony. The divorce proceedings were, surprisingly, fast. When you have your husband on video admitting to embezzlement, and he is currently sitting in a holding cell unable to make bail because you froze the assets, he tends to be very cooperative. Richard signed everything. He signed away his claim to the cars. He signed away any request for spousal support, the nerve of him to even ask. I visited him once in jail. I needed to know where the earrings were. He looked terrible. The orange jumpsuit washed him out, and without his expensive skincare regimen, he looked 10 years older. "The pawn shop on 4th and Main," he muttered, not meeting my eyes. "Ticket number is in my wallet. The police have my wallet." "Thank you," I said. I stood up to leave. "She flipped on me," Richard said, his voice bitter. "Tiffany. She cut a deal. She's testifying that I masterminded the embezzlement. She says she didn't know where the money came from." "And you?" I asked. "I'm testifying that she blackmailed me," he said. "It's a mess, Sarah. I'm looking at 5 years. Minimum." "Well," I said. "At least you'll have a legacy. You'll be the cautionary tale they teach in ethics class." I retrieved the earrings. I had to pay the pawn shop $4,500 plus interest, but putting them back in my ears felt like reclaiming my soul. Meanwhile, the First Wives Club, as we now called ourselves, was thriving. Claire did divorce Michael. She took him to the cleaners. Turns out, she had been the one really running the logistics company's finances for years. She forced him out, bought his shares for pennies on the dollar, and now runs the company as CEO. Michael is currently living in a condo in Florida, trying to become a crypto influencer. Brenda. Brenda surprised us. She didn't divorce David. "He's an idiot," she told us over wine one night on my patio. "But he's my idiot. And he's genuinely sorry. He's going to therapy 3 times a week. He signed a post-nuptial agreement that basically gives me everything if he ever looks at another woman. And honestly, I don't want to date again. I'm tired." I respected that. Every woman's justice looks different. As for me, I found myself in that big, empty house. But instead of filling it with stuff, I filled it with people. I started hosting weekly dinners for women going through high-conflict divorces. Claire and Brenda came. Friends of friends came. We drank wine, we shared war stories, and we shared strategies. I realized that I had a skill set that was desperately needed. I knew how to find money. I knew how to read a trust. I knew how to spot a liar. I wasn't just Sarah the housewife anymore. I was Sarah the specialist. One afternoon, sitting in my home office, formerly Richard's man cave, I filed the paperwork for my new LLC. Phoenix Asset Protection and Recovery. I was back in business. 3 months later. The house looks different now. I painted the kitchen a soft sage green. Richard hated green. I replaced the leather sofa with a plush velvet sectional that you can actually sink into. The nursery, the room that was supposed to be the nursery, is now my walk-in closet and dressing room. I put a chandelier in there. I put a velvet ottoman in the center. It is a shrine to me. I walked past the guest room today and saw the boxes of files for my first 3 clients. Client 1, a woman whose husband claims his business is bankrupt, but who just bought a boat. I found the offshore account in 2 days. Client 2, a woman whose fiancé asked for a prenup that seemed a little strict. It was a trap, I rewrote it. Client 3, Brenda. Helping her structure the postnup. My phone buzzed. A text from our group chat, the cleaners. Claire, just saw the news. Tiffany got 3 years. Fraud and identity theft. Brenda, and Richard? Claire, plea deal. 4 years. Plus restitution. He has to pay back every cent to the clients. I stared at the screen. 4 years. Richard would be 50 when he got out. He would have no license, no money, no wife, and a criminal record. Tiffany would be 28. Her youth, her currency, would be spent in a federal prison uniform. I felt a strange sense of pity. They had gambled everything on a fantasy. They thought they were the main characters in a movie where they could do whatever they wanted. They forgot that every movie has a villain, and sometimes, the villain is just a woman who knows how to read a spreadsheet. I walked out to the backyard. The sun was setting, casting a golden glow over the garden. The hydrangeas Richard planted were dying, but the rose bushes my grandmother planted years ago were blooming fiercely. I touched a petal. You were right, Grandma, I whispered. Knowledge is power. And timing is everything. I wasn't angry anymore. The rage that had fueled me through those 24 hours had burned itself out, leaving behind a clean, solid core of strength. I had been reborn in the fire of betrayal. I was harder now, yes. But I was also clearer. I knew my worth. And I knew that my worth wasn't tied to a man, or a baby, or a pot roast. It was tied to my name. My legacy. My actions. I took a deep breath of the cool evening air. It smelled like freedom. So, here I am. 6 months ago, I was given 24 hours to pack my life into a box and leave. Today, I am the CEO of my own firm, the owner of my own estate, and the captain of my own soul. I get asked a lot if I miss him. If I miss the life we had. And the honest answer is, I miss who I thought he was. I miss the illusion. But you can't live in an illusion forever. Eventually, the lights come on. Eventually, the fake belly falls off. And when it does, you have to be ready to look at the reality, no matter how ugly it is, and say, I can handle this. I wanted to tell you this story not just for the drama, though, let's be real, the drama was top tier, but because I know there are women out there right now who are sitting in kitchens, chopping vegetables, worrying that they aren't enough. Maybe your husband is distant. Maybe he's critical. Maybe he's hiding his phone. Or maybe he's wonderful, but you've handed over all your power to him. You don't know the passwords. You don't know whose name is on the deed. You don't know where the money goes. Please, take it from me. Take it from Sarah. Get your name on the paper. Check the accounts. Ask the hard questions. Don't let love be an excuse for blindness. Love is partnership, not submission. And a real partner will never be afraid of you being informed. If Richard had been an honest man, my questions wouldn't have scared him. But because he was a liar, my questions destroyed him. Be the woman who destroys the lie. I'm Sarah Caldwell. I'm 43 years old. I'm single. And for the first time in my life, I am exactly where I am supposed to be. If you enjoyed this story, if it made you gasp or cheer, please hit that like button and share it with a friend who needs to hear it. And tell me in the comments, what's the biggest red flag you've ever ignored? Let's talk about it. Stay strong, ladies. And always, always check the receipts.